Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to see a clip that Terry shared with me. Terry, do you want to say a few comments before I share?
Steve, I became aware of you.
Yeah, about this this particular piece, you know, I like very much. What does it mean to you?
This is what drew me into my adventure with the Black Church, and the irony that something that seems so negative to most people can be seen by them as so positive in their faith. This is how I want to go to church every Sunday.
Me too. That sounds good. Okay, enjoy, guys.
Some of y'all don't know it like that.
Yes, so this extract, Terry, I would love to go to church and see Sophia every Sunday. Son extract. Okay. Now it's good. Good. Okay. So tell us more. So I don't know if I need to introduce Terry because you all know her, but like what I like about the story is that it's one of a continuous. Because I read not the whole book, but the beginning of our book. And it seems it's someone who's very curious, very open-minded, very loving, very kind, who's there in the trenches. She's been hosting meetups for Jordan Peterson, for integral theory. She's joined a Black church, and I suppose she came especially for the music and the vibe, which is so beautiful, so amazing, which is a complete departure from actually white church, I suppose. Huh? And it seems like your quest is one of a constant spiritual re-updating, and it seems like you started your journey as like a bit of a new ager, then back to let's say more Christian roots, then integral theory, and then all over the place. So it seems like your opinion is very relevant to the times that we're in. Maybe you've been doing in the last 30, 40 years what people are just figuring out today, you know, like where are we spiritually? Maybe you've paved the way a little bit, and hopefully you have gained some valuable insights that you can bring to us.
Well, thanks so much, Max, both for the introduction and for starting with that piece of music. It's almost like, what more do I need to say? That, in some ways, that communicates things that I have been frustrated that it's very difficult for me to say. I know the book is long, but there was so much to the explosion in my consciousness that happened in that particular adventure with the Black Church that it took 365 degrees to explain it. I think I would summarize, I feel the vision I've been given was a glimmer of a possibility of how we could recreate or how we could integrate from our post-religious, post-modern, post-whatever view, how we could go back and grab some of the best of traditional religion. And to me, that's the only way we're going to save ourselves, because those of us who keep growing higher and higher, which isn't necessarily me, because I think I'm probably stuck somewhere, but we just get farther and farther apart from the rest of the folks in the United States, certainly, and in the world. So my quest, my frustrating quest, has been to find a way that we can stand next to the folks who are still in traditional religion and just coexist with them, and maybe best case raise their sights just a little bit from where they are. I once heard it described as some integral psychologist called it horizontal integration, where you stand right next to them, you're right here, and then you just point a little bit to the highest of their values, not your values, the highest of their values, so that they're called to that. Being humble to know that I don't necessarily, because the more I know I don't know, because things that I used to think were stupid keep coming around to have a new truth to them at a new level. So I don't know how you'd like me to proceed, Max.
Well, I don't know. I have a, it seems like you're able to see what's best about it, but there are some things that potentially will have disturbed you. Like maybe you came for the amazing music, the atmosphere, but you left for the gay bashing, right?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, nothing I say is to diminish in any way the wounding, the shame, the stunting of growth, and for many people, much worse, that traditional religion scarred them with. And that's why I put on the headliner to my little book space in the marketplace. Don't read this if you haven't been out of traditional Christianity at least 20 years, because you have to have been able to have healed to, from, or let go all of that before we can start to say, okay, how could I go back and deal with them and with the things they love from a higher perspective. And I guess I was lucky because I was brought up Catholic and I didn't have any serious negative experiences. It became too tight for me. It was too small a shirt. But I loved the sense of the sacred it gave me, and even the sense of discipline, the ability to focus on things. I know I'm thinking of Clay when I say this, but I used to be the kind of person who would love to have your desk. You had to put your holy card perfectly in the upper right corner of your desk and sit with your hands folded. And that was fine with me. I know it would have been torture, literally, for some other people, but that suited me fine. So I was able to just gently let go of it, then go through my 30-year New Age phase, which I'm going to say really new thought. I like to make the distinction new thought versus New Age. Begin to feel what was missing there, which is everything Ken Wilber describes as the downsides of mean green. And let me see if I can do that briefly. So much emphasis on intuition that we let go of logic. So much intuition, so much emphasis on the individual expression that we let go of our ability to be together in a group. And so much emphasis on non-judgment that we let go of our ability to be discerning. Those three things began to just drive me crazy in my New Thought community. And I'm still a part of it. I still like the fact, in fact, I want to say I'm incredibly blessed that I've been able to be in an alternative spiritual community where we could do ceremony and pancake breakfast and hospital visits, and I could put on skits, all those things you need. I need community for desperately. I had a community where I could do that, but I just got bored. It began to seem, the word that started coming to me was insipid. It just felt insipid, like a squid on the beach that couldn't go anywhere. It was a nice squid, it was a lovely squid. And then I got dropped into this black church that was like the opposite, in every way the opposite, from the ice bucket to the lobster pot. And I'm going back and forth between the two. And I begin to see that at the extremes, they come around. They hate each other, but there are ways where they come around and are striving for the same thing. And that's what put me on this quest. How can we revalue what the others are valuing and see our own value in it?
I'm going to ask you a challenging question, but I would like, if you could indulge me, is let's say you could create your own, like maybe not perfect, but an amazing synthesis of a religion that takes the best of New Age, the best of Black Church, the best of White Church, the best of Integral, the best of all of them. What will it look like?
I've only spent about 2 million hours thinking about this question. It would not be down the middle on anything. It would validate the extremes of everything. So the need for boundaries and the need for compassionate release, you know, the need for logic and the surrender to knowing beyond logic, and the need to be a strong individual and the willingness to give up everything for the good of the group where it's appropriate. And it would have the Black church music.
Yeah, I love what you say, guys. At any time, feel free to please raise your hand and participate, because it's very interesting subject. If other folks could share their video, Kathleen, Clint, James, that would be fantastic. But it's optional. But like this, at least I can we can all participate, because I think this is what the most interesting part is. It's like we can all cooperate on this on the interesting journey that Teri has been upon. It's so fascinating. Yeah,
I think I would like to tell a little bit of the story of how I got to the Black church.
That's exactly what I was going to ask for, Teri, since I've heard it. I like this.
So my husband and I were vacationing on a little tiny Bahamian island. It's only 4 blocks wide, and it is completely closed on Sunday. There is nothing happening except the churches. But you could walk 6 blocks past all 7 of the churches. And all of them, except the Jehovah's Witness, Tom, had music blaring out of them. It was just like that music that we were playing beforehand. And it was like hypnotic. It just pulled us in. And my husband and I, we got ourselves a pew under a ceiling fan, looking out the window at a coconut palm that was just turning golden with the beach out the other. And I said, oh, I have to have this. This makes no sense. It violates everything I believe. I have no space in my head for the devotional thing that's going on in my heart. So we came back home after vacation and we looked for a Black church, and we actually found one only blocks from our house. The first one we went to didn't work out, but the second one, which was also blocks away, clicked. And I ended up in a dialogue with the pastor that went 2 years and became the subject of my book. And in everything, I kept thinking, this is hopeless, because in every case I would say, well, how can you believe this? And how can you believe this? And how can you believe this? And with each thing, he listened to me. He picked up a pencil and he took notes, and he would say, so you're saying you don't believe, which totally blew me away that he was able to do that. But it also drew me in. And I was able to find in almost every case, not all of them, the gay thing was the sticker, unfortunately. And Jesus saves me. I kind of got through the Jesus saves me thing, but on everything else, I could either see how it related to my belief, or I could see how it would be possible to believe it without being what I had originally thought. I thought he had to be either stupid, uninformed, crazy, or evil. Those were the only 4 possibilities going in. And afterwards I said, no, I see why he did this. I said, it suits. Very sad.
I find it rather unfortunate that sometimes something beautiful, is wrapped around. It's like flies are attracted by the light. It's almost like some parasitic ideas sometimes go and stitch themselves to a beautiful core, and almost like, oh shit, if only you did not say that and believe that. And yeah, it's a pity that, but then who's to say where are the good ideas and not? Because for them, gay people is a sin, right? It was pretty clear for this guy, no budging, it's like being gay is a sin, right? And so honestly, I don't know if in the Bible it's written that being gay is a sin. I'm not sure.
It is, and we spent 20 pages worth of the book on that. But there are ways around it for liberal Christian churches that choose to look for a way around it.
But is it written black and white in the Bible?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh yeah.
Of course, along with other things, like you're supposed to kill your teenager if he talks back to you, so.
Yeah, there are some tough words, sometimes in the Bible, tough words. Yeah.
Very, in that vein, are most of those very strict guides in the Old Testament, and wasn't the New Testament a lot more opening and freeing? That's what I've heard. I haven't studied it enough to know, but.
Well, what he would say, the pastor with whom I co-authored the book, Bishop Phil Thomas, what he would say is the Bible is one whole story arc. It's not so much 1,000 little lessons as one story arc. And if you buy into the story arc, he's willing to debate with you on any point here, there, or the other. But the story arc of human beings are flawed. We can't possibly help ourselves. Only by surrendering to Jesus do we have any hope of getting the kind of grace we need to go on. That's the only place he won't budge.
Yeah, there is a beauty in the anchoring of like only through this way you can be saved, and all of this. It's like, in a way, it's very simplistic but beautiful as well. It feels this way, but the edge is, like when you have only one door of access, it opens the door to those kind of things. Because when it's written black and white, it's like it's difficult if you identify as Christian to step away from those beliefs that are there in the scripture, right? So how can you reconcile your own faith? Like, can you pick and mix? Like you have a highlighter and you cross some stuff that that's what is difficult, I find, to reconcile with our modern day and age. Or perhaps it's just that who knows? Like, do you think Jesus really believed that? Or I don't know in which book he was written, or was it in the Old Testament, perhaps? Sodom and Gomorrah? Is that what it is? It's in the Old Testament, maybe not the new one, right?
I don't remember the citation. I can find it. There's actually several citations. The only sense I can make out of it is that it's an evolutionary thing, that it comes from a time in history when the overwhelming need was to populate the earth, and anything that wasn't about populating the earth was a bad thing.
Okay, I was thinking as well that maybe it's for people to behave, in particular sexually, like one partner for each, and because actually, but at the time, the Old Testament is like, people living in a desert, not having much resources. So, guy, please, maintain, your posture. Like, do not reproduce too much, because it's not, I wonder sometimes if it's not like the narrative serves as like a tale to preserve, the common good, because it's like with contraception pill, maybe the context is different, but at the time it's like the sexual intercourse has some repercussion. So of course, to kind of like I think one of the big thing in the Christian tradition in particular is repression. sexuality, but it's kind of a perception of sexuality. It's like you have one partner, and it's almost like a contract with God that you have, and if you betray that, you're a sinner, and you ought to be burnt if you're a woman, or all that jazz. And divorce is not a thing. And perhaps those were supposed to be rules that were at the time designed in order to better the situation that they were in at the time. Maybe now is different, who knows?
I completely agree with you, Max. In fact, I came to sense more and more that many of the arguments that seemed to be about something else were really at bottom about sexuality and sexual control. And I'm of two minds about that. The one is the whole obvious patriarchal repression of women as property. And the other is we're not in a good place right now. The sexual revolution has brought us to a place that we're clueless. We don't know what we're doing. And so I am not unsympathetic to pushback.
So Justine, I'm gonna be with you for a moment, but I'm dying to ask Teri another question. It's like, it seems the evolution of Christianity is more towards more and more tolerance, though, even the new Pope, is opening up. Some people believe he's a devil because of that. But, we came to Martin Luther, who finally said, well, maybe divorcing is okay, seeing all the corruption of the church at the time. And so it seems like all the rigidity of the church are going bit by bit. Now the Pope has openly said that, okay, maybe being gay is not exactly, it's okay. I mean, he's a bit ambiguous, but he's not saying it's a sin, which is a huge improvement over the previous ones. So where do you believe potentially that, I don't know, maybe the future of Christianity will come potentially by a sexual liberation?
No question, Christianity has been evolving. I did a lot of looking at that. And here's where I know Clint knows a lot more than I do. But the whole emerging Christianity movement was to bring a lot of the new big ideas about spirituality into Christianity. And it was very exciting for a couple of years, but as far as I know, it has petered out. That the liberal Christian churches just can't hold the membership that the conservative, I'm going to say, blue ones do, and it really bugs me. I think it bugs Jamie Wheel too. He's trying to find a way to crack the nut of getting the passion and intense excitement in the more black and white churches. By that I mean no gray areas churches.
Okay, Justine, go ahead.
One thing popped into my head when you were talking about the bishop saying surrendering to Jesus, which is not what I thought you said. It occurred to me that, the Hindus talk about surrender and the Buddhists talk about surrender, and surrendering is an energetic kind of experience. And I thought, well, worship and gratitude are energetic experiences in my experience, and they're related. And, prayer, maybe not petitionary prayer, but prayer and meditation could be. I'm just wondering if people that there are energetic experiences that human beings can have, and that people do have different explanations on how to induce it throughout different religions, and whether the experiences themselves are common. That's what I'm wondering. What do you think about that, Teri?
Well, yes. And surrender was a big part of this for me. I mean, my New Thought years talked about surrender to spirit. So yes, that can be held at many different perspectives and vibrations. What was new in the Black church was what they call praise and worship, what I'll call devotion. So the devotion energy is one step up, or something additional beyond the surrender energy.
Yeah, but the gratitude and the worship and the devotion sound like they're all of a kind, maybe distinct in nuance, but similar.
So that's interesting. That's interesting, Justin. I'd like to explore that.
Okay, Ed.
Well, we can have lunch someday.
Okay, Terry, I'm interested in the clip we saw. I don't actually like using the words black and white, but that's what everybody uses, because if you look at people's skin, it's not actually black and it's not actually white. But just to use those words anyway, I don't see any black people here. I didn't see any white people in that clip. And I myself once went to a church, what I suppose you could call a black church. It was just me and my friend were the two white people there. And I got some, there was some pressure. The whole service wasn't quite as fun as that one, but it was very, very passionate, and all the audience were engaged, but actually in a more diverse way. People were saying similar, different prayers and facing different directions all at the same time. And then the preacher was amazing, a great philosopher he was, that I'd never heard in the Church of England, any such deep philosophy. But the whole service was geared to this point with, so that people could come up and decide to commit to it. And I think it was basically for teenagers, really. So everyone who passed that stage of life was already committed. But I felt this need to, that it was really bad that I was holding back, because I felt like that was holding everybody back by being there. So I thought, well, I think I should just stand up. But then what happened was I was too frightened to do that. And then what happened was I was actually physically lifted up. So I was standing up, and totally against my will, although I had the idea, of doing it. And then I was too embarrassed not to go up to the front and have this preacher lay his hands on my head, and I felt like silver liquid just flood through my body immediately. And it was a pretty amazing experience. And then at the end, a guy wanted to take my name and address, and I gave it to him, and he said, we'll come and visit you. But they never did. And I think that's the whole of that experience is to do with this racial embarrassment. What would you think?
How long ago was that, Ed?
50 years.
Oh.
In England.
Uh-huh. I don't know. I do know I still have a very strong, close, respecting relationship with the pastor, but I feel less welcome among some members of the congregation in the last couple of years with the shift of the way race relations are being handled.
Okay.
More likely, based on what I know of spiritual communities, Ed, somebody dropped the ball and forgot to call
you. Yeah, you think they should have come to see me, but they just got it wrong. I was also living in a house where there were all sorts of people into Tibetan Buddhism and things like that. So it's possible they might have been told, oh no, don't go to that house.
Yeah, but there's no greater feather than their caps than to save a soul. So if they were on the ball, they should have been willing to go through hellfire to get to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed. Ron, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Max. This is a bit of a leading question, and I should, in full disclosure, say that I was one of the editors of Teri's book and saw lots of advanced proofs, and I'm a huge fan of Teri and the book and boosting the book, and we had book parties, and I've met the bishop, even at his church, where we had like kind of Christian Dharma combat or something like that. So my leading question is, in the integral world, we often talk, about transcend and include, and the idea of that development is not all about going up somewhere. It's also about going down and including. And it's very easy to pay lip service to that. A lot of people say, oh, of course, I'm in favor of inclusion. Put me down for that. But as you said, Max, I love your phrase that Teri's in the trenches. That could be like emblazoned somewhere on your house, Teri. That's how I think of you, as in the trenches. And again, it's different to do lip service and just say, yeah, we should really include, for example, traditional religion, and to spend years talking to a Black fundamentalist preacher. It's really doing the work. And that's what I think Teri's book kind of models, is not that that's everybody's path, but some version of how you actually have to do the work if you want to say you're including. So my question is, I know it's a big question, but if you had some general advice for people, not necessarily your path, but what are some of the lessons you've learned about if you really want to go down and take in a very different perspective and immerse yourself in including other views, even including, so-called earlier developmental views, which, as you were talking about, may not even be an accurate way to put it. I think that'd be really interesting, because that's a big part of the Rebel Wisdom project and sense making, is understanding people's sense making and meaning making structures. And then if you have time, just in case I don't have a chance again, if you can get it in at some point, if you could just, I don't want to do the spoiler alert, but if you could tell the story that led to the original title of the book, I think that really is a good glimpse into the bishop's thinking. And it's kind of clever. As Teri knows, when she changed the title to The Bishop and the Seeker, I was really bummed, because I love the original title, and I thought The Bishop and the Seeker sounded like a bad porn movie. So I wasn't crazy about that, but the original title really was subtly illuminating about the bishop, I thought. So thank you.
Thanks for both those prompts, Ron. On the first one, it's going to be different for everybody. I can tell you one person that I met who I thought was brilliant. She lives in a part of the country where the only place she can get community is by going to a biblical literal church. And so what she did is she would go and she would take her book by Deepak Chopra or whatever alternative spiritual Buddhist thing she had, and during the sermon she'd just sit there and reading it. And over the years, people would say, "Oh, what were you reading? Can I see that?" So that was an easy way out. Really more centrally for us, it's going into those conversations with the belief, the faith, the knowing that the other person's bizarre belief is serving them in some essential way. And that there's maybe a lower end to it and a higher end to it. And you can speak to the higher end. And it's everything we know about asking good questions, acknowledging where you agree. I'm not sure if I can be more specific about that, except maybe to answer your second question, which maybe demonstrates it. So I started bringing friends. During these 2 years I was in dialogue with him, I would bring friends on my weekly visit with the bishop. And once I brought a friend who's an interfaith pastor, and she said something like, "How can you believe this stuff? How can you believe that everybody is wicked and evil? Little babies, everybody's wicked and evil. How do you believe that?" And he got kind of a perplexed look on his face, like he couldn't figure out what she was asking. And he said, "Well, no, wait, wicked and evil isn't that bad. And that's what I wanted to use as the title of the book, because what he went on to say is we're all wicked and evil. So there's no point in having any judgment about it. We just have to surrender to Jesus, because we're never going to be any better. And he'll grace us and he'll show us gently a way to get better. I just said that a little bit wrong, but that the only path to genuine growth is that surrender to something else. And I said, oh, my New Age people have one path to non-judgment by saying everybody's always perfect, whole, and complete. And he has another path to non-judgment by saying everybody's wicked and evil. So there were many such moments of going all the way around to find the common.
Can I just do really one quickie follow-up, which is, and I think this is obvious, but what struck me is that you weren't straw manning, that you were really doing a really deep and comprehensive form of steel manning, which we always talk about. And again, that's something we can give lip service to. It's very different to do. And I think you and I have had talks, so I know you agree with this. There may be nothing more straw manned than traditional religion. Almost all the arguments against it are arguing against something that's not there, or that it's not, taking on, which is what a lot of the critiques of like new atheism are about, et cetera. And so that's what struck me about what you did. As kind of role model that.
Thank you, Ron. Clint?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the whole emergent thing, because this is kind of prevalent to this discussion. It's very weird, because I've been involved with the emergent church probably for about 15 years, and it's been around for about 25, 30 years. One of the biggest proponents is a guy named Brian Mclaren. And in, I think it was like around 2005, he was voted as one of the most influential men in the Christian church. And it's really interesting, because I've heard different groups within the emergent church that don't consider themselves necessarily emergent say, the emergent stuff petered out like 5-10 years ago. Like there's a gentleman named Phil Wyman who was involved with the Four Square Church that came to my house, and we talked for a while. And he's a big speaker at pagan festivals, because he was more inclusive than pretty much any pastor you'd ever meet in the street, pretty much. But he even was saying, oh, emergent is dead. And it was like, and I have not seen proof of that. What I am seeing, though, is very interesting, is that the principles of the emergent church, we were just talking about this on Recapture the Rapture, primarily of kenosis, of self-emptying, is very prevalent, not just in the emergent church, but has been taken by different people into the different denominations, Lutheran, Methodist being the primary ones I've seen. And so there is this resurgence or this kind of infusion of a newer, more expansive Christianity in less militant types. To speak to your bishop and seeker type, that's actually a different phenomenon, in that there's a book called Global Pentecostalism that was written about 10 years ago. And it was written by these two kind of more fundamentalist guys, but at least open, because they were sociologists. And so they went to all of these Pentecostal type of big Pentecostal movements with it throughout the world. And what they found was very interesting, is that they found your type, Terry, of kind of like trying to exclude, and still be kind of, fun and have the ecstasis. But those kind of churches, at least in the third world and in more of the developed world, were didn't survive, weren't able to survive. They had to be more inclusive. And so this is really what's happening at the forefront and the edges of Christianity. It is like Spong said, I think about 20 years ago, that it must change or die, is what he said when he left the church. And it is changing, but the media attention seems to go all towards the other polarity Like we're seeing doubling down and militancy within the Black church, within the white church, Baptist, that kind of stuff. So I think that, I don't know, it's just like, I'd like there to be more media play, and I would like the different groups within the emergent church to play better together, or actually at least know that, no, it's not. It's like, we're all part of something much, much larger. But it is happening, and I'm excited, but it's just like it's being, that message is, I feel like, is getting suppressed because it's against, these fragile times. And I think because as we get less fragile, I hope that it will get more media play and we'll see this. But for right now, it's representative in emergent commons and different places. And I think these little constellations of like aha-ness that you are actually, and I want to commend you, Teri, for being in the trenches and doing that work that you've done for so long, and to being that kind of that ambassador that to the New Thought and to this bishop and the Black church, because and you will win the day. I know you will. This is the great thing, because it's like that church will not survive very long. I just don't think, because it needs the principles that you're offering there. And it might be the next pastor, or it might be some young person you talk to that really embraces what you're talking about, because they have that mindset. And that's really what you're looking for, fertile fields, really. So
I hope you're right, Clint.
Yeah, Teri, I'm very on board with your project. I don't know where you've been for my past 20-year experience in the so-called green community, but that's what I've been wanting since for 20 years is, how do we build upon the conservative Christian base? I wasn't surprised to find out that Jehovah's Witnesses were represented on that small Caribbean island you were on, because they have a very big appeal to the Black communities. They have since the 1870s, as the Pentecostal movement. There's very Black involvement from the beginning of that, about 1906. So Teri, I didn't mention the whistle. I see her in a doughboy hat and a Tommy gun with a whistle. We're over the top. Charge.
I just want to say something. I was in conversation for a couple of years with this Methodist minister who was a friend of Brian Mclaren. Both of their churches were local here. And in the Methodist district, which I think was Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, maybe just those, his was the only church that was growing. It was growing a lot. So they bumped him up to the bishop's office because they wanted to spread that. In about a year, they decided he's too much. They did not want to hear it. They just didn't. And they sent him back out to a different church that needed to grow. So, I mean, I did see Brian Mclaren, and I talked to this guy, Rod Miller, for years. And what they bring is vibrant and alive, and people love it. But the church architecture did not want to hear it.
Yeah, that's why it's probably going to have to continue to be 1,000 experiments of 1,000 different flavors, because institutions do what institutions do. And yet I love institutions, and there's a lot about institutions that I love. So for me, it's a frustration.
That is the pattern, though, Justin. It's almost like there's an ascendancy, and then there's like, no, that's too much. And it's actually, I really think it's cool, because in other structures, I think there will be kind of more of this tendency to, really kind of look at them as a guru, where when they get resent out, to kind of suppress them almost, they end up building the churches in that area. So it actually has an opposite effect. And it's interesting, because I've seen like Brian McLaren's stuff go to different churches, and the little group will rise, and then they kick them out, and then they start their own church, and they start a really true emergent church, where before I felt like they were just kind of giving a head nod or just kind of placating, like, yeah, we're inclusive, So.
Yeah, my daughter actually went to Brian McLaren's church for a while. We raised him Unitarian because we didn't really want to hand him a religion, but she went with one of her friends to his church for a while.
Yeah, and since we're popcorning, which I hope is okay with Max, I just wanted to say,
okay with Teri, because Teri, do you have anything to comment on Clint and Justin?
Okay, yeah, go first.
I do, but I'm fine with Ron finishing, and then I'll say what I was about to.
Okay. Yeah, just to add another little piece, since this is going a certain direction, is a lot of, and Clint probably can actually expand on this more than me, but a lot of religious scholars very often point out that what we call fundamentalism is actually a modern phenomenon. It's not what religion was. It's actually, strangely, something that kind of came up in modernity and has a lot of weird little pieces of modernity in it. And that the real, you know, think of someone like the way Peugeot talks about the ancient kind of transcendent church. That's really what, you know, there was that thread always in the more ancient forms of religion and its higher forms, and fundamental, you know, there wasn't like fundamentalism, so to speak, back then. So that's always a thing we need to us postmoderns and beyond need to remember. So I just wanted to throw that in.
And my bishop doesn't like to be called a fundamentalist. I call him a biblical literalist. Distinction. I thought of what I should have said earlier when Ron asked me, how can we be with people? You know, the answer I gave is the head answer, but the heart answer is that it's the devotional connection that works for me. The fact that I got turned on to an ability to have a relationship that feels like being loved by God and loving God. So, you know, all of our spirituality is about union with everything, and they introduced me to communion. And it made no sense. Logically, I couldn't, you know, Ken Wilber's Three Faces of God, it was the only logic I could put behind it. But that's how I can communicate with them. So when we first landed on this little island in the Bahamas, the very first impression at 6 a.m. in the morning, and a guy sitting on the stoop who doesn't know us and says, "Isn't it a God's glorious morning?" And I said, "Oh, I want to live here." So that ability to connect, to assume there's love everywhere and it's coming from somewhere and it's shared, is the thing that let me get through the difficult parts of the discussion.
Okay, I have a question for you, Teri, on what you said earlier about moving away from judgment into discernment. Is what you said specifically, I suppose, mentioning, I suppose, the Christian church in particular, but many institutions that, you know, perhaps you feel they're too judgmental in their approach and they're not logical enough. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yeah, that's what I meant by the ice chest and the lobster pot. My New Thought community was so much about non-judgment that we never called anybody on anything. So one person's individual expression could ruin a lot of people's effort to build something. We were unable to draw lines. So I go to this black church and they'll chastise somebody the moment you put your toe over the line, you get chastised. So it was like, oh my God, isn't there a place in the middle that we can hold both of those?
Yeah, it's like saying yes to everything is actually, I don't know, it's like saying no to everything in a way. I mean, I don't know, but it's like, can you say yes to gay bashing? You know, if they say yes, you say yes, you know, like how, it's true in the hippie movement or something. It's like there's so much dogma around creating peace collectively, but it's like you need some barriers in order to maintain peace. And where do you put those barriers is actually, in a way, working towards the greater good. So it's like, where do we put those? You know, what is, I don't know. Like, what do you think? Where do you think we ought to put them now for, I suppose, what is the common goal of all religion, which is the greater good?
Well, I think I hear you asking about how I set boundaries within my experience at that church, and I just let it be known. There were times I felt like I was culpable for even being in the room for some of the things he would say. And so I would just let it be known I don't agree with this in whatever form I can find. I would try to always say, I see your attempt to enforce the rules that feel important to you. I see your desire for purity, and I know you believe this is God, but I can't abide by this. So you're right. It's real tough to draw a line in community.
I want to make a comment on what Max was pointing to, because that Methodist minister that I talked about, he said his most difficult thing was the boundaries of the community. Because he said, I like to say yes to everything, but he had to take into account that if he let in too much, he would lose the conservative members. And if he didn't allow enough, he wouldn't be getting new people in. And that was the thing that he was constantly dealing with on an individual basis, like what's too much for this person, what's too much for that person. And he had to deal with that all the time. Now he was growing and he was losing some of the more conservative members in the process. And he had to watch that.
In a way, maybe saying no to something is saying yes to something else. Because if you say no to gay bashing, you say yes to inclusion, actually. So it seems like the dichotomy is not always, thought in those terms, but in the realm of ideas, it seems like we're going as a trend together towards more inclusion of diversity. It's like, how can we bring unity in our diversity is, I think, for me, the end goal, right? Terry, what do you think? And then James.
Yeah, I would like to think that that's the trajectory, big picture, long-term scale we're all on, but there's so much backsliding. Both backsliding in the sense of people choosing to go back to religions that are at the warrior level, and in the sense of us modernists expressing anti-racism in ways that looks like it's going back to tribal level. So I can only have faith that big picture, long term, we're going to become genuinely more inclusive.
Okay, James, go ahead.
Thanks. First, Terry, this is all delightful, and I'm delighted to learn of this story and this experience in your background. I think it's wonderful, and as someone who spent 25, 30 years inside various forms of Christianity, my side question is, well, what's the best way to buy your book? So I want to get that out there. But then I'm curious to hear maybe a little bit more of the story of what happened after the book, or were there any various outcomes? I heard that you came maybe closer towards understanding and expanded some of your perspectives in that direction. What happened in the other direction? And what were the outcomes or impacts for the pastor, for that church? What did you see play out after that project?
The impact I saw in the church is that the bishop got much more careful about what he said around certain topics in sermons. He was careful about how he worded things. Now, that may have been, I have some evidence that was when I was there, he was careful. And when I wasn't there, I would sometimes get a tape of the sermon and go, holy cow, he's back to square one. So I know I influenced him, and through him, some of his congregation. I've had less luck sharing this story. I never found the way to really express it. Most folks just say, oh, that's nice. Or they think I'm crazy, because there's just too many layers, too many 360 degrees you have to go to be able to follow me to where I got. But I'm still on.
Okay, I'd like to ask, with the worry of inclusion, some folks who haven't really shared, shared a little bit about what has been shared. So in order that I see on screen, Elena, do you have something you'd like to share potentially?
I'm just soaking all this in, and I don't have anything at the moment.
Okay, no problem. Leilani?
I'm pretty much in the same boat. I'm just, I guess, pretty still kind of hung up myself. This is me, hung up on church. The community piece is like not a no-brainer, and being able to transcend the Jesus piece became troublesome many years ago, and I actually took a series like that Deepak Chopra did, and it opened me up more, and then that went away. So I guess I'm still, I don't even want to I don't even, how you do that? How does anybody, did you do that, Teri? Did you like transcend and include and kind of come to it? No, I'm sorry, I'm like babbling a little bit.
No, what you're saying is important, Leilani, because it's so difficult for most people to make the first step. I don't think I would have made the first step. It was the music that came out of that little church and drew me in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I worked for the Catholic Church for a lot of years, and it was, the doctrine that I hung in because I got into Jungian psychology and I could interpret things through that window. But we had a sister church that was a Black church, and we went to that Black church, and it was like that for me. It's like I loved it, and I wanted to like go there more, and they would come and stay with us, but it became us and them kind of. We were the rich white people taken care of and being like sort of, it's like this looking down on. And then I just got disgusted with it and didn't want to participate anymore. But I'm kind of going with this kind of evolutionary Christ kind of wing. Thank you, Teri. I mean, I really do appreciate this morning. It's really, yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Leilani. Tom, you shared a lot in writing. Would you like to share a few words in speaking? I don't know if you contributed much.
Oh, here I am. This is like, I was just typing. So this is Teri's thing. So I want to talk a lot, but no, so I just do the little bit in the comments, but I really would like to have a one-to-one or a small group conversation on this subject with her, because I think we have so much in common. Right. From somewhat different perspectives, but yet they're very compatible. So, but I'm saving that for a future conversation. I keep chatting Tom to a minimum.
But that's a great thing to know, because we might set this up. Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. The chapel thing is my main thing, and all the adjacent things, just you just add to it.
Thanks, Tom. Kimberly.
I kind of missed what you're doing. You're going around and asking us if we have any questions for Teri, or
anything that comes to your mind that you would like to share.
So I am actually more curious as to, are you going to a church now, or are you seeking one, or are you satisfied? Where are you?
I would love to be able to have all in one place, all the aspects of spiritual community I want, and I can't. So I have to go. I'm still have one foot in my New Thought community. I have one thought in the Black church. They're going to have their first in-person meeting since the pandemic next Sunday, and I would be going. It's only the pandemic that's holding me back. This group right here is my spiritual community right now. So I just have to make do with piece here, piece there.
I'm there with you. I have that too, my Buddhist group, you guys that are more, on the leading edge, and then with the pandemic, there's very little gathering, which I miss. So we're kind of in a tough spot to have all that we want. So I wish we all could find what we really wanted here.
I might be able to arrange a camera in the balcony of my black church so we could all go and be represented there next Sunday.
What time is that next Sunday?
I think it's 10 ET.
Okay. We might hope to do it.
I think they make special glasses with stuff on where maybe you could sneak in and do a little something and we can all share your eyeballs. And the music, oh, I love that. Black people, when they showed up at Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall, and they have crappy music for Jehovah's Witnesses, always improved, always. And there's a lot of them in communities where there's a lot of Black people, but not where I lived in Aberdeen, but it was always like, it really rocked when they showed up.
Just a little comment, but we're all white folks here. I don't know if it's self-segregatory, but we're all white. It's okay. Huh? It's okay to be white, but yeah. Clay, get me out of this mess that I'm in now.
Okay, or get you. No, first up, I have to say, can you hear me? Because I haven't used this for a while. Okay, cool. Get you out of this mess. We're all white. I don't identify as white. Just so you know, I transcended race in a class I took called Transcending Race, etc. Embracing the Cosmos. It was really cool. Teri, this is so fun. Thank you for generously being you on this in this session of Hidden Treasures. I've been trying to make notes because I'm an outsider on a lot of the work that you've done, and I'm an insider on some of it too. This is definitely my community. I guess the notes that I would bring to the question is like, so you said earlier that you used to think that some things were stupid. Can you give us an example of what you used to think was stupid that's not stupid anymore?
Well, generally how anybody can take the Bible literally. Trying to think of a good example story on that. Okay. There's this god-awful story about a warrior who tells God that if he wins this battle, he'll sacrifice the first thing he sees when he goes back to his house. And darn, it's his daughter who comes dancing out to greet him, so he has to sacrifice his daughter. And I'm thinking, oh man, how is he going to preach on that? And he preaches it as, oh, this literally happened, and it's literally a lesson for us. And the lesson is that this guy was grew up without a father. And so he had self-esteem issues, and his self-esteem issues got projected on his kids. Don't let that happen to you. So like, if that's your idea of a literal interpretation, okay, I can go with that.
Gotcha. No, that's great. That's a great example. I was just wondering, like, what's behind that? Because, for many of us, I think we can find a lot of things that are, maybe I would say don't work, about some of the ideas that are out there. If I can continue on, there was one more thing that I wanted to ask you, and that was, I didn't really write it down as a question, but I have this question about, so do you think that the people in the church believe that the charismatic leader is speaking the words directly, like a translation from the God, or do you think that they get that it's just a charismatic interpreter of some ideas?
I think all of them would say they like him because he's good at interpreting the Bible. So nobody would say it's his opinions. They would say, so in essence, because they like his interpretations, they think they're right. Did I answer that?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it was kind of a, I mean, I don't really, when I say, when I ask religion questions, I don't really feel like I have much of a ground of being, because I don't have a lot of experience with it. So it looks like from the outside to me, like, oh, they just think the leader is saying what God would say if God were there, and how can that be? And so,
and to his credit, he would say, I enjoy arguing with anybody. There are many ways to interpret scripture, but your interpretation must be internally consistent. It must match up. You must be able to show all the other places in scripture that support it.
right. Ooh, that could take a while. All right. Well, I'm satisfied, and I just love to hear anything that you have to say, basically. So I'll pass it over to whoever's next. But I wouldn't shoot my daughter or whatever he had to work with, no matter who I said I was going to do it to.
That's
All
because
right.
you don't have self-esteem issues.
I guess that's probably right. It might be that I'd shoot my daughter because of what she said to me. How about that? Nah. All right. Good being with you.
Kathleen, I don't see you, but do you have something to share, Kathleen? If not, Alex, Sasha?
Well, I'm also the one who's soaking it in and being here to witness Teri's story, which is I'm really curious about this. I grew up in the family of atheists, so I have very little knowledge from participatory knowing of what the church is. But I always was drawn into it by music. And the music was either organ music, that it just blew me away every time I was a part of this acoustics and that experience, or the chorus, the a cappella singing with the multiple voices. That just affects me on such a deep level. Listening to the Black church, I see a lot of movement, a lot of dancing, a lot of enjoying the music from physical perspective. So my question would be to Teri, how much of that physical aspect do you think drew you in versus just the audio effect?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I loved the audience participation in the service. And in fact, now in my new age church, every once in a while I'll yell amen or hallelujah. And everybody looks around and says, what? What's she doing? But it's so alive. In fact, I got on their dance team at one point. So that was a great experience. And there were many times when reality was so bizarre, so many things were juxtaposed and intermixed, that it was a trip.
Yeah, I totally can relate to that. I'm looking for a religion that is not a religion that has that dancing aspect to it, because all my classes, dancing, I call it church for me. That's my church. I go there, I dance, I see people's faces, I interact, I express myself, I communicate with the teacher. All of that is absolute church to me.
Well, maybe we can start a praise dance crew here on Emergent Commons.
Yeah. It never happens on Zoom. I tried my classes on Zoom. It's not there yet. probably needs a little bit of a touch and smell and some things, like we're waiting for technology to burst out of the video and audio to give us more visceral experience. Thank you, Terry. I'm so happy I made it to this session.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alex, Sasha. In fact, when I was in London, a guy did ecstatic dance in churches, like, and it was amazing, like, because of the sound, the atmosphere and everything. And I was like, oh, that's definitely what we should be doing with churches, you know, like ecstatic dance floors, like no alcohol, no speaking, and everyone, you know, is like very respectful of each other's boundaries, all age group, people become ecstatic, but it's amazing. For me, I think it's the future. I would like to see a future of Christianity that has this. And I went to another church as well in London as well, invited by a friend, where they did like, they had like a different, everyone could be a preacher, had something to say. So they came with PowerPoints and then say the love of God, for them is this, for them is that. And then they have a live band who play, you know, like Christian rock with like a ball. It was amazing. And I was like, wow, yes, that's the future of Christianity. It's fantastic, you know, but it was in a way white. So it was like, in a way, kind of like a black church, but white, with rock, but it was super cool, you know, super like good atmosphere and so on. Anyway, so Kathleen, you shut your cameras.
Hi, yeah, great to be here. Sorry to have my video off most of it. Hi, thanks, Terry. It's lovely to hear your story, a bit of your story, and that's the main reason I came. And yeah, just listening. I mean, yeah, the thing of seeking a spiritual home, it really resonates with me. I just, yeah, nothing quite fits. So it's like, that kind of, I've not felt like I wanted to compromise, you know, like it feels like a compromise. So I'm just wondering, does it feel like does it feel like you have to put a side of yourself to the side in order to fully jump in? And do you call yourself a Christ? Like, do you have do you call yourself a Christian? And or yeah. And another thing is that yeah, like I've gone to ecstatic dance, but I find I just feel like it's like the culture there doesn't sit with me. It's like very new, like this new age. It feels like, what is it that is, why do these practices land in a particular culture? There's a lack of ground or a lack of kind of grit or something that doesn't, I don't know, but like and there was a story about somebody said about, oh, they picked, you know, in the church, in the audience, that they found themselves rising. I can't remember who it was that said that, Ed, I think. They were being picked up by the others. And I think like we don't do that enough in that kind of more like new age. It's like we've lost how to do that. We don't know how to do that for each other. And so that's, I think, one of the pieces that I really would want from a church. But yeah, anyway.
I had the same experience.
I barge in first to say, when I was picked up, it wasn't by anybody physically. I was literally involuntarily lifted up.
Okay, like by God or whatever. Yeah, okay, yeah, okay.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Kathleen, I did try the ecstatic dance culture here. There's quite a culture in DC. It's called I think it was called Sweat Your Prayers. But and I physically I enjoyed it, but it didn't have the devotional element, and it wasn't the same without that. So I started a group called Dance Your Prayers. We had a much smaller turnout, but I used devotional music from all cultures, whether it was Hindu, Buddhist, or Christian, or what have you. And that was satisfying for me for a number of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay, thank you. And to finish, Marie.
Thanks. And yeah, this is awesome, Terry. A couple of things have struck me. And that is, I've encountered people that have such a spark for whatever their faith tradition is, that they're not judging me for what mine is. They're not trying to convert me, or they're not trying to condescend to me, or they're not contemptuous. They have some kind of spark or joy. And I find it so lovely to be in conversation with people who have some kind of spark or joy. And I haven't ever been in a faith tradition that has any kind of spirituality. I've only been part of Unitarian Universalism, and they say, like, leave your beliefs at the door, you know, walk in, but leave your beliefs at the door. You can believe all sorts of things. And then, I mean, thinking about that from that inclusion perspective, like I you know, I was like, oh, yay inclusion, or yay free thinking. Like, you know, it's free thinking, but it's like, okay, no, it's free thinking as long as you think like us, or it's inclusive as long as you're inclusive like we are. And I found it really, I mean, it's just gotten to be to the point that it's like, okay, when you're talking about the barriers, what barriers do you put in place toward the greater good? So are the barriers like, okay, well, it's not just, you know, we're not going to do gay bashing, but it's okay if we bash people who bash gay people, right? No, like, okay, so if it's no bashing, well, then it's just like, it's word police. Then you're just word police. I mean, you could still think that, and you could still have this underlying value that gay bashers are shit people, but you're just not saying it out loud. And so there's actually something that's kind of like raw and honest about just gay bashing, which I'm like, I'm not, you know, I'm not in favor of it, but you kind of just know exactly where you stand. But there's so much, it's not just bashing people. It's like, if you're not the right kind of inclusive, then you can bash those people. And so then there's this whole like, okay, so are the barriers more like, rather than words, it's what you're saying, it's values. So then how do you know what the values are? Like, we did this thing at the church that I went to where we like are supposed to track our actions and our spending. So we can say what our values are, we list what our values are, and then we track our actions and our spending. And like, how many of us are actually just sitting down watching Netflix and drinking, you know, Coca-Cola and eating, you know, takeout pizza? Like a lot of us say our values are, oh, eco-friendly, all this crap, and, you know, like, you know, activism and spending time, you know, promoting whatever rights. And so it's like, if you actually track what the values are, then, I mean, how, that's so much work, and it lacks energy. And like what you're talking, there's just like such a lack of energy. And seriously, the music in our congregation and in a lot of it, it's so boring. It's like, seriously, one reason I left, it's so boring. And it's like the devotion went to a cause, you know, instead of something mysterious, the mystery or something like that. Like the devotion goes to a cause, and so the energetic experience is the cause. And so rather than coming together in community around something, it's like all these people, it's like a group of individuals that have their own causes, and maybe a couple of them have the same cause, and maybe they go off and have an energetic experience, you know, marching together or something like that. But there's no kind of like energetic experience that we're sharing together, certainly not around music. So yeah, so I don't know, I guess I want to hear more from you, like about your barriers, like where do you put the barriers there? And like, I mean, what even is the common good? Or, you know, like, that's what's the greater good? That's, a lot of people would really disagree there too, I think. So
What you tip off for me there, Mari, is the discussion about what Wilber calls ascended versus descended religion. And the Unitarians are the perfect descended religion. It's all about what you do for the common good, not about how you connect with something that's higher. And I agree, there's a flatness to that. You know, there's a what's the word? Ineffectualness about this alone and a flatness to that. But the two tend to hate each other. Wilbur pointed that out to me. And it's very difficult to find any group that honors both.
Yeah, I agree with you, Terry. I think inclusion, both in terms of people, but in ideas and in the way beyond and the very pragmatic, I think is key. So thank you guys. You know, we're almost over. I just have two tiny announcements to do. So the one is this week I'm gonna do 5 days little series on collective emergence. So what we're gonna do here is not me, but I'm gonna try to just like be the oil and let's see what we can collectively come about, and maybe some subjects that are different from you know, the rapture, the end of the world, everyone getting sick, the government, all that jazz. Maybe we can, I don't know, be constructive together. Who knows? Let's make something emerge. So I would love to see some of you guys. Another thing as well is like I have you know, issues. It's like I get bored really easily, and I love to try new things. And I've been doing this same thing for too long. So I would love if someone would want to keep going on this kind of format, but on their own. You know, if they want to keep going with hidden treasures. So please reach me. And last question for me to Terry. And after, I would like to share a meaningful musical piece as well for you guys. But a final question for you, Terry, because at the beginning of this enterprise, you know, we had a bit of an argument on Circle, if you remember. But then, you know, we had a chat and we actually realized, well, we agree on so many points, actually. Because it's like the format of writing. Sometimes, you know, you don't have the context, you don't know. But you know, I think we were quite civilized about it, and you gave me your hand. It's like, okay, let's work together, let's solve this. And I thought, well, that's great. That's a great Christian practical endeavor to do. It's like let's make peace with each other. And but also maybe I felt a bit of skepticism towards, you know, the thing that I was trying to do. So do you think I did a good enough job?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate your acknowledging that, Max. It was big for me too, to say, you know, it doesn't make sense to have this negative energy in the community. Let's see what we can do together. That was a big deal for me. So thank you for that. And if you're talking about this venue, I think this is absolutely brilliant. I mean, and I would have said that even before you chose. Now I think it's doubly brilliant, of course. But I think you've done a beautiful job with it. And this is something, one of the most valuable things going on in this community now, because of the way it gets us a chance to know each other more deeply. So thank you, Max.
Wow, thank you, Terry. That's a beautiful compliment. Thank you. Okay, so so I would like to part ways on it's something very meaningful to me, and both. Like I'm trying to find essence of things, you know, it's one of my favorite things to do. And for me, this is kind of the essence of, let's say, the Catholic Church. So like when I was young, I went to Catholic Church, even though I very quickly diverted from this, but there is something really beautiful about the, those chants as well. You know, Black people have, amazing chants. But there's something really deep and profound about traditional chants. So I would like to share with you one that I think is really beautiful. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and thank you for your presence, everyone, and have a lovely end of the weekend.